Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Announcement. The crystal chandelier cast a warm glow over the meticulously arranged dining table at the Bayshore Club. Stanley Pierce, my father-in-law, had spared no expense for his 40th wedding anniversary celebration. Waiters in crisp uniforms navigated between guests, refilling champagne flutes and serving appetizers on silver platters. The air was thick with expensive perfume and forced laughter. I adjusted my tie, feeling it tighten around my neck like a noose. 5 years of marriage to Olivia Pierce Sullivan had taught me one thing. These family gatherings were performances, not celebrations. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Alex," my mother-in-law Beatrice commented, her diamond earrings catching the light as she tilted her head. "Something on your mind?" "Just taking it all in," I replied with a practiced smile. In truth, I was calculating how much longer I needed to stay before making a polite exit. My construction company was finalizing plans for a major development project, and the paperwork waiting on my desk held far more appeal than this gathering of Boston's self-proclaimed elite. Stanley clinked his knife against his glass, silencing the room. At 65, he still commanded attention. Steel gray hair perfectly coiffed, his posture military straight from his Navy days. "Beatrice and I want to thank everyone for celebrating this milestone with us," he announced, his voice carrying the distinctive accent of old Boston money. 40 years is a long time to put up with me." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. My wife, Olivia, beamed beside me, her hand resting on my arm, a gesture of affection that felt rehearsed. We looked perfect together in photographs, she with her honey blonde hair and prep school pedigree, me with my dark features and the physique of someone who'd worked construction sites before owning them. "To mark this special occasion," Stanley continued, raising his glass higher, "we have an announcement. Next week, we're taking the entire family to our favorite place on Earth, Hawaii." Cheers erupted around the table. Olivia squeezed my arm, her eyes glittering with excitement. "The Pierce family tradition continues," Stanley proclaimed. 5 glorious days at Hanalei Bay." I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. Hawaii in September would be perfect. I could use the break after closing the Westlake project. "What time is our departure?" I asked Olivia excitedly, already mentally rearranging my schedule. The table fell oddly quiet. Stanley's smile remained fixed, but something shifted in his eyes. "Alex," he said slowly, setting down his glass, "I'm afraid you won't be joining us. Someone needs to stay behind and watch the children." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "The nanny has that week off," Beatrice chimed in smoothly. "And the children's school schedules are so important. We wouldn't want to disrupt their routines." My gaze shifted to Olivia, expecting her protest. Instead, she avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on her napkin. "Olivia and I discussed it," Stanley continued, the smirk barely concealed beneath his composed exterior. "She agreed it makes the most sense for you to stay behind." The pieces clicked into place. I wasn't part of this family. I never had been. 5 years of tolerated presence at their gatherings. 5 years of condescending remarks about my background thinly veiled as jokes. 5 years of being reminded I wasn't quite good enough for a Pierce. I studied the faces around the table. Olivia's brother Nolan and his wife Victoria, her sister Charlotte and husband Preston, all watching with barely concealed satisfaction. This exclusion had been planned and approved by the entire clan. I rose slowly from my chair, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten filet mignon. "That's interesting," I said, my voice deceptively calm, "because I own the beach house you're planning to stay at." The room went completely silent. Confusion replaced smugness on their faces. "What are you talking about?" Stanley sputtered, his composure cracking. "Hanalei Bay Plantation Estate," I said. 6 bedrooms, private beach access, infinity pool overlooking the ocean. Purchased through Sullivan Holdings last spring. Olivia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "You never told me. You never asked," I replied simply. I've been renovating it for the past year. The master suite has an outdoor shower and a private lanai. I was saving it as a surprise. Stanley's face had turned an alarming shade of red. That's impossible. That property belongs to the Kanakoa Trust. We've rented it for years. Not anymore. I withdrew my phone, pulled up the property deed, and slid it across the table. I bought it when the trust dissolved last year. The rental agreement expired 3 months ago. Stanley snatched up the phone, his hands trembling slightly as he scanned the document. You're welcome to stay there, I continued pleasantly, taking back my phone. But I'm afraid I'll need to be present as the property owner. Insurance requirements, you understand. Beatrice recovered first. Alex, surely we can work something out. I've already arranged for the children to stay with my mother, I interrupted. She's looking forward to spending time with her grandchildren. I looked directly at Olivia, whose face had drained of color. Unless you prefer to stay home with them while I take the family to Hawaii, I'm flexible. The silence in the room was profound. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, buttoning my jacket, I have an early meeting tomorrow. I nodded to the shocked faces around the table. Enjoy your dessert. As I walked out, I heard the urgent whispers begin behind me. For the first time in 5 years, I disrupted the carefully orchestrated Pierce family dynamics. But what none of them realized was that this was just the beginning. Chapter 2. Beneath the Surface. The Sullivan Construction headquarters occupied the 12th floor of a downtown high-rise, all steel, glass, and unobstructed views of Boston Harbor. I designed the space myself. Open concept, minimalist furniture, concrete floors. My employees called it industrial chic. I called it a reminder of where I came from. You look like you could use this, said Ruby McAllister, sliding a steaming mug of black coffee across my desk. At 56, Ruby had been with me since I'd opened the business in a tiny rented office with secondhand furniture. She'd watched me build an empire from nothing, and her loyalty was one of my few certainties in life. That bad, huh? I asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. You've got that look, she replied, settling into the chair opposite my desk. The one where you're running calculations behind your eyes. I smiled despite myself. The anniversary dinner was enlightening. The infamous Pierce clan strikes again. Ruby made no secret of her disdain for my in-laws. What was it this time? Someone make another charming joke about how you didn't know which fork to use at your first country club dinner. They planned a family trip to Hawaii. I wasn't invited. Ruby's eyebrows shot up. They what? Apparently, I'm needed at home to watch the children while the adults vacation. Those entitled. Ruby cut herself off, composing herself. What did Olivia say? She agreed with them. Ruby's face softened with concern. Alex, I waved away her sympathy. It's fine. I revealed I own the beach house they planned to rent. That changed the dynamic considerably. Ruby laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. Oh, to have been a fly on that wall. Her smile faded. But Alex, this isn't just about a vacation. This is about respect. I know. I swiveled in my chair to face the harbor view. Ships moved silently across the water, tiny from this height, but powerful up close. Ruby, I need you to clear my schedule for the afternoon and get Walter Burke on the phone. Your security consultant or your lawyer? Both. After Ruby left, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a slim black folder. Inside were surveillance reports from the past 6 months, detailed accounts of Olivia's movements, phone records, credit card statements. I'd hired the investigators after finding a strange text on her phone. My suspicions had been right. The intercom buzzed. I have Walter Burke on line 1, Ruby announced. I picked up the phone. Walter, I need everything you have on Theodore Hammond. Yes, Dr. Hammond, Olivia's therapist. I'd known for months that my wife was sleeping with her psychiatrist. What I didn't know was how deep the conspiracy went. The Hawaii trip exclusion confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't just an affair. They were isolating me from the family for a reason. After hanging up, I pulled up the security footage from her home office. The camera, disguised as a smoke detector, had captured Olivia at my computer 3 days ago, searching through my files. She'd been looking for property deeds, specifically the Hawaii estate. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. We need to talk about Hawaii. Dinner tonight? I typed back, looking forward to it. I'll make reservations at Lucia's. 7 p.m. The pieces were coming together. I just needed to understand what they were planning before I dismantled their entire scheme. That evening, Lucia's was packed with the usual Friday crowd. The maitre d' escorted us to a corner table, private, dimly lit, perfect for the conversation ahead. Olivia looked stunning in a navy dress that accentuated her blue eyes, her hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. 5 years ago, that sight would have taken my breath away. Now I recognized it as battle armor. "You should have told me about the house," she said after we'd ordered, cutting straight to the point. "Like you told me about the family trip?" I countered. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That was poorly handled. Dad sometimes makes decisions without consulting everyone, and you just go along with them." Olivia sighed, reaching for my hand across the table. I allowed the contact while noting how practiced the gesture seemed. "Alex, you know how important family traditions are to the Pierces. We've been going to Hawaii every September since I was a child, and yet you were fine leaving your husband behind." "It wasn't like that," she protested. "The children need stability, and someone had to stay." "Don't," I interrupted. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence." Her eyes narrowed slightly. This wasn't going according to her script. "What exactly are you implying?" I leaned forward. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Your family has never accepted me, and you've never stood up to them. Not once in 5 years. That's not fair, isn't it? Remember last Christmas when your father suggested I'd lucked into my success? Or when your mother remarked how interesting it was that someone from my background could adapt to their social circle? Where were your objections then?" Olivia's cheeks flushed. "You're being oversensitive. They've welcomed you. They've tolerated me." I corrected. "There's a difference." Our entrees arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Olivia used the interruption to regroup, her expression softening into the one she used when she wanted something. "Alex, let's not fight. I'm sorry about how the trip was announced. Of course you should come with us. It's your house, after all." She smiled, reaching for her wine glass. "Actually, I'm impressed you managed to acquire that property. Dad's been trying to buy it for years." "I know," I replied. The owner mentioned that when I made my offer. Confusion flickered across her face. "But how did you even know about it?" "We've never discussed." I pay attention, Olivia, to everything. Something in my tone made her hesitate, her smile faltering slightly. "Is there something else bothering you?" she asked carefully. "Why have you been meeting with Dr. Hammond outside your scheduled therapy sessions?" The color drained from her face. "What?" 3 meetings in the past month. Coffee at Westbridge Plaza, lunch at the Wellington, dinner at his house last Tuesday. Her shock quickly transformed into indignation. "You've been spying on me? Answer the question. I don't have to justify my friendships to you." "Friendships," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" Olivia's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. "Theo, Dr. Hammond, has become a friend. He's been helping me work through some personal issues." "In his bedroom?" She flinched as if I'd struck her. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What I don't understand is what you're planning. Because this isn't just about an affair, is it? This is about something bigger." For a moment, genuine fear flashed in her eyes before she masked it with outrage. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, gathering her purse. "And I won't sit here being accused of—" "Sit down," I said quietly. "We're not finished." Something in my expression made her comply. "The Hawaii trip is still on," I informed her. "We leave next Friday. Everyone's invited. You, your parents, Nolan, Charlotte, their spouses. One big happy family." Relief visibly washed over her. "So you forgive." I didn't say that. I signaled for the check. "Consider this your warning, Olivia. Whatever you and your family are planning, I'm 3 steps ahead. And unlike you, I don't make empty threats." "Alex, we'll discuss this further in Hawaii," I said, standing. "In the meantime, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." As I walked away, I couldn't help but notice how quickly she reached for her phone. No doubt calling Dr. Hammond to report this unexpected development. Let them plot. They had no idea what was coming. Chapter 3. The Architect. My mother's home in Dorchester hadn't changed since my childhood. Small but immaculate, with the same faded floral curtains and family photos crowding every surface. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls greeted me as I entered without knocking, the way I always had. "There he is," Mom said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 62, Evelyn Sullivan still moved with the energy of someone decades younger, her Irish heritage evident in her quick wit and fierce loyalty. I bent to kiss her cheek. "Morning, Mom. You look tired," she observed, immediately pouring me coffee. "Those fancy in-laws running you ragged again." I smiled despite my mood. "Something like that." "Well, sit down and eat something before you waste away. Those designer suits don't hide how you're skipping meals." She placed a warm cinnamon roll in front of me. "Now, tell me what's really going on. You don't usually show up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday unless something's wrong." That was Mom, straight to the point. "I need advice," I admitted, breaking off a piece of roll. "Must be serious if Alexander Sullivan is asking for help," she said, settling across from me. "Is it work? The children? It's Olivia. And her family." I met her eyes. And yes, it's exactly what you suspected all along. Mom had never warmed to Olivia, though she'd tried for my sake. She'd seen through the Pierce family charm from the beginning, recognizing the condescension beneath their polite smiles. "She's having an affair," I continued, "with her psychiatrist." Mom's expression darkened. "That unethical bastard. And her. After everything you've done for that woman and her family. It's worse than that. They're planning something. Olivia, her parents, possibly her siblings. I think they're trying to gain control of my assets." "Your company?" I nodded. "And properties. Investments. They've been pushing me to consolidate everything into joint holdings for estate planning purposes. Now I know why." Mom's eyes flashed with anger. "Those greedy, entitled." She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. "What are you going to do?" "That's why I'm here. I'm planning something decisive, but need to know if I'm going too far." I outlined my plan, the evidence I'd gathered, the trap I was setting in Hawaii, the legal maneuvers already in motion. As I spoke, Mom's expression shifted from shock to grim approval. "Your father would have done exactly the same," she said when I finished. "He never let anyone take advantage of him, and he never left a debt unpaid. My father had died when I was 15, leaving us with little except his principles and work ethic. He'd been a construction foreman, honest, hard-working, respected by his men. I'd started working on sites at 16, learning the business from the ground up while putting myself through night school. The Pierces think their name and connections make them untouchable," Mom continued. "People like that don't change, Alex. They'll just find another way to use you if you let them off the hook. So you think I should go through with it? All of it?" She reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Listen to me. When your father died, I had people telling me to take settlements, to compromise, to not make waves when his company tried to deny his benefits. I refused. I fought them and won because it was right." Her gaze intensified. "You've built something remarkable from nothing. Don't let anyone take that from you. Especially not people who were born with everything and still want more." I squeezed her hand. "Thanks, Mom. Just promise me one thing," she said. "Protect my grandchildren. They're innocent in all this." "Always," I promised. "They'll never want for anything." After breakfast, I made one more stop before heading to the office, a nondescript building in Cambridge housing Burke Security Consultants. Walter Burke, ex-military intelligence turned private security expert, was waiting in a sparse conference room. "The Hammond surveillance is complete," he said without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. "You were right about everything. I reviewed the documents, photographs, transcripts, financial records. My suspicions confirmed in black and white." "There's more," Walter continued. "Hammond has a pattern of inappropriate relationships with patients. We've identified 3 others in the past 5 years, all wealthy women going through personal crises." "What about the financial angle?" Walter nodded grimly. "Also confirmed. Hammond has been consulting with Stanley Pierce for months. They've had 7 meetings at the Pierce family office, all off the books. And we found this." He pushed forward a document, A draft agreement creating a family trust that would give Olivia's family significant control over Sullivan Holdings in the event of my incapacitation. Incapacitation, I repeated. That's where Hammond comes in. Precisely. As your wife's psychiatrist, his professional assessment would carry weight, especially if he could demonstrate you were experiencing mental health issues. The piece is locked into place. They're setting me up to be declared incompetent. That would be my assessment, Walter agreed. The Hawaii trip was likely intended to proceed without you, so they could finalize details without your knowledge. I stood, gathering the documents. Implement the full security protocol for the Hawaii property. I want everything in place before we arrive. Consider it done, Walter replied. And Alex? These people are playing a dangerous game. Be careful. I smiled coldly. Oh, I'm not the one who needs to be careful. As I left, I made one final call to Meera Patel, my personal attorney, who had started her career prosecuting fraud cases before entering private practice. Meera, it's Alex Sullivan. I need to execute plan checkmate immediately. All the safeguards we discussed, she asked, her voice crisp and professional. Every last one, I confirmed, and add the Hammond contingency we discussed. Consider it done. The documents will be ready for your signature by end of day. I ended the call and looked out at the Boston skyline, a city where I'd fought for every inch of success against those who thought I didn't belong in their world. The Pierces and Dr. Hammond were about to learn a painful lesson. They'd chosen the wrong man to betray. Hawaii wasn't going to be the vacation they expected. It was going to be a reckoning. Chapter 4, Paradise Lost. Hanalei Bay stretched before us like a postcard come to life. Crystal clear waters fading from turquoise to deep blue, mountains draped in mist rising dramatically in the background. Our charter jet had landed in Lihue an hour earlier, and now the Sullivan Pierce entourage was making its way up the private drive to the estate. I watched through the SUV's tinted windows as Olivia's face lit up at the sight of the house. The renovation had transformed the already impressive property into something truly spectacular. 11,000 square feet of island luxury perched on a cliff overlooking the bay, with a series of pavilions connected by covered walkways, all designed to maximize the breathtaking views. It's even more beautiful than I remember, she murmured, reaching for my hand. I allowed the contact, noting how her wedding ring caught the sunlight. In the seats behind us, Stanley and Beatrice were uncharacteristically quiet. They'd been subdued since boarding the plane, their usual commanding presence diminished by the revelation of my ownership of their beloved vacation spot. The power dynamic had shifted, and they were still adjusting. Wait until you see the interior, I told Olivia. I had it completely redesigned. The cars pulled up to the grand entrance, where staff stood waiting to greet us. I'd arranged everything meticulously, private chef, housekeeping, concierge service, all personally vetted by Walter Burke's team, all equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance technology disguised as ordinary objects. Alex, Stanley said as we exited the vehicles, making a visible effort to sound jovial. You've been holding out on us. This is quite the investment. One of many, I replied pleasantly. Shall we? The great room elicited gasps of appreciation. Soaring ceilings, walls of glass facing the ocean, custom furniture in soothing natural tones. The renovation had preserved the home's Hawaiian character while adding modern luxuries. A smart home system controlling everything from lighting to security, a wine cellar, a home theater, and a fitness center with ocean views. I took the liberty of assigning rooms, I announced as the staff began distributing welcome cocktails. Stanley and Beatrice, you have the West Wing guest pavilion. Charlotte and Preston, the East Pavilion. Nolan and Victoria, you're in the garden suite. And us? Olivia asked. The master suite, of course, I replied. Top floor, best view in the house. You've thought of everything, Beatrice commented, her tone suggesting this organizational skill was somehow surprising. Always, I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Why don't we all get settled? Dinner will be served on the main lanai at 7. As everyone dispersed with their luggage, I noticed Stanley lingering behind, examining the property with a calculating eye. Not admiring it, but appraising it. When he realized I was watching, he quickly adopted a more casual demeanor. Impressive security system, he noted, gesturing to the discreet keypad near the entrance. Can't be too careful with a property like this, I replied. Everything is monitored 24/7. His eyes narrowed slightly. Everything, I confirmed. I'm a firm believer in protecting what's mine. In the master suite, Olivia was already unpacking, arranging her carefully selected vacation wardrobe in the walk-in closet. The room was spectacular, a private sanctuary with panoramic ocean views, an outdoor shower garden, and a lanai perfect for watching the sunset. Alex, this is magnificent, she said, genuine awe in her voice. How did you manage to keep this a secret for so long? I can be discreet when necessary, I replied, watching her reaction carefully. She paused, something flashing behind her eyes before she smiled. Well, it's the most wonderful surprise. Thank you for including everyone despite the awkwardness. Family is important, I said, echoing the phrase the Pierces use so often. Speaking of which, I invited someone to join us tomorrow. Oh, who? Dr. Hammond. I thought it might be nice to have him here. I watched her face pale, since he's practically family at this point. Theo? But why would you? I called him last week, I continued casually. He seemed quite eager to accept, something about needing a break from his practice. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she folded a blouse. Alex, I don't think that's appropriate. He's my doctor. And your friend, I added, as he pointed out at dinner. Besides, he and your father have so much to discuss. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? Business matters, I said vaguely. They've been meeting quite regularly, haven't they? Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and smiled. Excuse me, I need to take this. Why don't you finish unpacking and meet me downstairs? The view from the infinity pool is spectacular at this time of day. I stepped onto the lanai and closed the door behind me, watching through the glass as Olivia immediately reached for her own phone, fingers flying across the screen as she typed a message, no doubt warning Hammond and her father that I knew more than they'd realized. Perfect. The call was from Walter, confirming that all surveillance was active and the additional security measures were in place. The property was now a sophisticated monitoring system, capturing every conversation, every message, every move. Sir, there's something else, Walter added. We've detected unusual activity in your company accounts. Someone attempted to access your private server using Mrs. Sullivan's credentials. When? 20 minutes ago. The attempt was blocked by our security protocols. I smiled grimly. They're getting nervous. Double the monitoring on all financial channels. Already done. And sir, Hammond's flight lands at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Have someone pick him up. The friendly approach for now. That evening, dinner was a masterpiece of calculated hospitality. The chef prepared local specialties, fresh fish, tropical fruits, island-inspired cocktails, served on the lanai as the sun set spectacularly over the bay. I played the gracious host, ensuring everyone's glasses remained full as conversation flowed with artificial ease. A toast, I announced, raising my glass. To family traditions. May they continue for generations to come. Everyone raised their glasses, though I noticed the exchange of glances between Stanley and Beatrice. Olivia smiled too brightly, her nerves evident in how often she checked her phone beneath the table. So, Alex, Nolan said, breaking a momentary silence, what made you decide to buy this particular property? There must be dozens of luxury homes on the market. The question was casual, but the intent behind it wasn't. Nolan, a finance executive at a Boston investment firm, had always been the most openly dismissive of my success. I have a particular interest in properties with sentimental value, I replied. This one had been in the Kanakawa family for generations before financial difficulties forced them to sell. They were pleased it would be maintained rather than demolished for some developer's latest project. Stanley frowned. The Kanakawa family? But I dealt with a trust representative. Ah, yes. The trust was created to handle the transaction discreetly. Hawaiian families can be quite private about financial matters. I smiled, much like some Boston families. The implication hung in the air. Stanley's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, we're grateful you've shared it with us, Beatrice interjected smoothly. Such generosity after the misunderstanding about the invitation. Water under the bridge, I assured her, though everyone at the table knew it wasn't. Families should stick together. Don't you agree? The conversation shifted to safer topics, planned activities, island recommendations, reminiscences of past Hawaii trips, but the undercurrent of tension remained. I observed them all with detached interest. Olivia's forced enthusiasm, Stanley's calculating gaze, Beatrice's social orchestration, Nolan and Charlotte falling into their practiced roles in the family dynamic. They thought they were maintaining the facade. They had no idea I could see right through it. After dinner, I suggested everyone enjoy the home theater or relax in the hot tub. As they dispersed, I caught Stanley heading toward his room. Stanley, I called a moment. He turned, composing his features into a neutral expression. Of course, Alex. We walked to the edge of the property, where the infinity pool seemed to merge with the ocean below. The night was perfect. Warm breeze, stars emerging in the darkening sky, waves crashing against the cliffs. Beautiful spot you've found here, Stanley commented, accepting the scotch I offered. Must have cost a pretty penny. I can afford it, I replied simply. He nodded, swirling his drink. You've done well for yourself. Built quite an empire. From nothing, I added, as he liked to remind everyone. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Perhaps I've been less than appreciative of your accomplishments. Perhaps. The truth is, Alex, I've always been protective of Olivia. She's my youngest, my princess. When she married below her station, you mean? Stanley sighed. You have to understand, the Pierces have certain traditions, expectations. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I've understood for 5 years. What I don't understand is why you've been meeting with Dr. Hammond to discuss my company's finances. The glass in Stanley's hand stilled. I don't know what you're talking about. 7 meetings at your family office in the past 3 months. No official record, no appointment in your calendar. Just the two of you discussing how to transfer control of Sullivan Holdings to the Pierce Family Trust. His face hardened. You've been spying on me. I prefer to call it due diligence. A good businessman always protects his interests. Whatever you think you know, I know everything, I said calmly. Every meeting, every call, every draft document. The only question is why. Why go to such lengths? My company is successful, but hardly the empire you suggest. Stanley stared out at the ocean, calculation visible behind his eyes. You're mistaken, he said finally. Hammond and I were discussing Olivia's treatment. Doctor-patient confidentiality. Don't insult my intelligence. I cut in coldly. You haven't cared about Olivia's well-being since she was old enough to be a social asset. His mask slipped, anger flashing across his features. You have no right. I have every right, I countered. She's my wife, and whatever game you're playing ends now. Stanley's expression shifted, the businessman emerging as he reassessed the situation. Alex, perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot. I've always respected your drive, your ambition. We're not so different, you and I. Actually, we are. I built my success. You inherited yours. Before he could respond, Olivia appeared on the lanai, her silhouette backlit by the house lights. There you are, she called. Everyone's wondering where you've gone. Just having a chat, I replied, not taking my eyes off Stanley. Man to man. We'll continue this discussion later, Stanley muttered, downing the last of his scotch before plastering on a smile for his daughter. As they walked ahead of me back to the house, I noticed them exchange a look, a silent communication that confirmed everything. The Pierces were accustomed to getting their way. They'd never encountered an obstacle they couldn't overcome with money or influence. Until now, in the master suite that night, Olivia was unusually attentive, suggesting a moonlit swim, offering a massage, even initiating intimacy for the first time in months. I recognized it for what it was, damage control. You seem tense, she murmured, her hands working my shoulders. Is something bothering you? Just thinking about tomorrow, I replied truthfully. Dr. Hammond arrival? She asked, her fingers faltering slightly. Among other things. She pressed a kiss to my neck. Alex, about Theo. There's nothing inappropriate between us. He's been helping me with some personal issues. I'm sure he has. What does that mean? I turned to face her. It means I'm looking forward to having him here. It's time we all got to know each other better, don't you think? Uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Of course. Later, as she slept beside me, I slipped from the bed and moved silently to the hidden panel in the closet. Behind it was a small office space I'd built during the renovation, a command center with monitors showing feeds from throughout the property. On one screen, Stanley Pierce was in his room, speaking urgently on his phone. With a keystroke, I activated the audio. Getting suspicious, Stanley was saying. He knows about the meetings? No, I don't know how much he knows. Hammond arrives tomorrow. Yes, we'll proceed as planned. Just make sure everything is in place on your end. I switched to another feed, Olivia's phone screen as she typed a message, thinking I was asleep. He knows something. Be careful what you say when you arrive. We need to move quickly. The recipient, Dr. Theodore Hammond. I closed the panel and returned to bed, careful not to wake Olivia. Everything was unfolding exactly as I'd anticipated. Tomorrow would bring Dr. Hammond and the next phase of my plan. The trap was set. All that remained was for them to walk into it. Chapter 5. The Therapist. Dr. Theodore Hammond arrived precisely at noon, striding into the great room with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Tall, silver-haired, with the practiced smile and calculated warmth of a man who made his living manipulating emotions, he looked every inch the distinguished psychiatrist. Alex, he greeted me, extending his hand. What a magnificent property. Thank you for including me in this family gathering. I shook his hand firmly. The pleasure is mine, Dr. Hammond. Or may I call you Theodore? Theo, please, he insisted. We're all friends here. Friends. The word hung between us, heavy with irony. Indeed we are, I agreed, noticing how his eyes darted briefly to Olivia, who stood nervously by the windows. Let me show you to your room. You'll be in the guest house, private but still close to the main house. I thought you might appreciate the solitude after your busy practice. How thoughtful, he replied, following me out to the separate structure nestled among tropical gardens. Though I'm happy to be part of the family activities. Oh, I'm counting on it, I assured him. We have a lot to discuss. The guest house was actually a sophisticated monitoring station disguised as luxurious accommodation. Every word, every gesture would be recorded and analyzed. Walter's team had installed the most advanced surveillance equipment available, ensuring nothing escaped our notice. The view is breathtaking, Hammond remarked as we entered. One could get used to this lifestyle. Many have tried, I said, watching him closely. Few succeed. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face before his professional mask slipped back into place. Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to experience it, however briefly. Lunch will be served in an hour, I informed him. I've arranged for everyone to dine together on the main lanai. Perfect, he said, setting down his leather weekend bag. I look forward to it. As I left him to settle in, I activated the monitoring system from my phone, watching as Hammond immediately pulled out his own device and typed a message. The system captured it instantly. I've arrived. Sullivan seems normal, perhaps overly accommodating. Proceeding with caution. Lunch was an exercise in theater, everyone playing their assigned roles with varying degrees of skill. Hammond seamlessly integrated himself into the group, displaying the charm and conversational agility that had no doubt served him well in building his practice among Boston's elite. So, Theo, I said as dessert was served, tell us about your practice. You specialize in high-profile clients, I understand. He dabbed his mouth with a napkin. I wouldn't characterize them that way. I simply help people navigate difficult periods in their lives. Success often brings its own unique pressures. Indeed it does, I agreed. And how did you and Olivia meet? Professional referral? A momentary hesitation. Beatrice recommended me. Actually, many of my clients come through referrals. How fortunate that you could fit Olivia into your busy schedule, I commented. Weekly sessions for. How long has it been now? Almost a year. Olivia interjected quickly. Theo has been enormously helpful with my anxiety issues. And your private consultations have been equally beneficial, I assume. The table fell silent. Hammond's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened slightly. I'm not sure what you mean, he said carefully. The meetings outside your office, I clarified. Coffee shops, restaurants, your home. Very generous of you to extend such personalized care. Olivia's hand trembled as she set down her water glass. Alex, I told you. Those were friendly catch-ups. Theo and I discovered we have common interests in art and literature. How fascinating, I replied. And do you extend this cultural fellowship to all your patients, Dr. Hammond? Or is Olivia special? Stanley cleared his throat. Alex, this hardly seems appropriate lunch conversation. On the contrary, I countered. I find professional ethics extremely appropriate for discussion. Don't you agree, Dr. Hammond? Hammond's composure wavered only slightly. Professional boundaries are indeed important, but in small communities like Boston's social circle, some overlap is inevitable. I assure you, nothing improper has occurred. Nothing improper, I repeated. Like your meetings with Stanley to discuss my financial affairs? Were those within professional boundaries as well? The atmosphere shifted instantly. Hammond's face remained impressively neutral, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, he said smoothly. My discussions with Stanley were related to Olivia's treatment plan, which occasionally involves family consultation. Of course, I said, signaling for the staff to clear the plates. My mistake. The tension lingered as lunch concluded. As everyone dispersed for afternoon activities, Hammond approached me, his professional demeanor firmly in place. Alex, I sense you have concerns about my relationship with your family, he began. Perhaps we should discuss them privately. I smiled. Excellent suggestion. Why don't we meet in my study in an hour? I have some business calls to make first. I look forward to clearing the air, he replied, the picture of reasonable accommodation. In the study, another room thoroughly wired for surveillance. I watched the monitors as Hammond met briefly with Stanley in the garden, their conversation just beyond the range of conventional eavesdropping. Fortunately, Walter's team had deployed directional microphones capable of isolating their voices. He knows something, Stanley was saying, his back to the house. But not everything. We need to accelerate the plan. Hammond nodded. I've brought the preliminary evaluation. With Olivia's testimony about his erratic behavior, controlling tendencies, and the financial documentation you've gathered, we have enough for the initial filing. What about the Hawaii property? If he's hidden this, what else might be concealed? That's why timing is crucial, Hammond replied. Once we have temporary control of his affairs, we can conduct a thorough investigation of all his holdings. And if he fights it, Hammond's smile was cold. That would only strengthen our case about his mental state. Don't worry, Stanley. I've handled more difficult patients than Alexander Sullivan. I switched off the monitor as a knock sounded at the study door. Come in, I called. Hammond entered, the consummate professional in linen slacks and a casual button-down that probably cost more than most people's entire wardrobes. Thank you for making time for this conversation, he said, taking the seat I indicated. I believe clear communication is essential in resolving misunderstandings. I couldn't agree more, I replied, pouring 2 glasses of water. Clarity is exactly what I'm seeking. Then let me be direct, Hammond said, leaning forward slightly. I sense you harbor suspicions about my professional relationship with Olivia. While I understand your concern as her husband, I can assure you my treatment has been entirely appropriate, including the private meetings at your home. He didn't flinch. As I mentioned, our professional relationship has evolved to include some social elements. This is not unusual when treating individuals within certain circles, where rigid boundaries can sometimes impede therapeutic progress. And your meetings with Stanley? Were those also therapeutic in nature? Hammond hesitated, weighing his response. Family involvement can be beneficial in certain treatment protocols. Stanley has naturally been concerned about Olivia's well-being. Naturally, I echoed. And these concerns extended to my company's financial structure because I believe there's been a misinterpretation, Hammond replied smoothly. Any discussion of finances would have been in the context of reducing Olivia's stress factors. Family businesses can create unique pressures, I nodded thoughtfully. So your interest in having Olivia declared primary beneficiary of Sullivan Holdings was purely therapeutic? This time, Hammond couldn't entirely hide his surprise. I'm not sure where you've obtained that information, but in the draft petition suggesting I might be experiencing a mental health crisis requiring temporary guardianship. Was that also therapeutic? Hammond's mask slipped, just for a moment, before he regained his composure. Alex, I'm concerned about these accusations. They suggest a pattern of paranoid thinking that, frankly, raises some red flags for me as a mental health professional. Red flags? I repeated. Interesting choice of words. Perhaps we should discuss these concerns with Olivia present, Hammond suggested, shifting strategies. As your wife, as my wife, I interrupted, she's been quite busy. Meeting with you, accessing my private files, discussing with her father how to gain control of my company. Hammond's expression hardened. These are serious allegations, Alex. I wonder if you've considered how they might sound to an outside observer. I've considered it carefully, I assured him. I've also considered how certain other things might appear to outside observers. Your history of inappropriate relationships with female patients, for instance. The color drained from Hammond's face. That's completely false. Is it? Carolyn Westfield might disagree, as would Rebecca Thornton and Elizabeth Hargrove, all wealthy women going through personal crises, all former patients, all relationships that violated the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine's ethical guidelines. Hammond stood abruptly. I don't know what game you're playing, Sullivan, but making false accusations against a licensed medical professional is dangerous territory. Not as dangerous as conspiracy, fraud, and medical malpractice, I countered calmly. Please sit down. We're not finished. Something in my tone made him comply, though tension radiated from every line of his body. What do you want? He asked quietly. The truth, I replied. The complete truth about what you, my wife, and my father-in-law have been planning. Hammond stared at me for a long moment, calculating his options. Finally, he sighed. This conversation needs to include Stanley. Oh, it will, I assured him. Very soon. But first, I want to hear your version. Consider it therapeutic. Hammond's professional facade cracked slightly, revealing the calculating man beneath. You're more formidable than they gave you credit for. A common mistake, I acknowledged. One you've all made repeatedly. Before Hammond could respond, my phone buzzed with an alert from the security system. On the small screen, I could see Olivia entering Hammond's guest house, looking around furtively before beginning to search through his belongings. Excuse me a moment, I said, rising. Help yourself to a drink. This might take longer than anticipated. I left Hammond in the study and made my way quietly to the guest house. Through the window, I could see Olivia frantically searching through Hammond's luggage, finally extracting a leather portfolio which she began to examine. I entered silently. Finding what you're looking for? She gasped, the portfolio falling to the floor, papers spilling across the hardwood. Alex, I was just looking for the psychological evaluation Hammond prepared to have me declared incompetent. I finished for her, bending to pick up one of the documents. Interesting reading. Her face paled. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I corrected her. The question is why? Why go to such elaborate lengths? My company is successful, but hardly in the same league as Pierce Investments. Olivia's shock gave way to a flash of the ruthlessness I'd always suspected lay beneath her polished exterior. You really don't know, do you? Enlighten me. She laughed bitterly. The Sullivan Construction Land Portfolio. The properties you've been quietly acquiring for years. Dad realized what you were doing before you even married me. Understanding dawned. The North Shore Developments. 3,000 acres of prime coastal real estate, she confirmed. Land you purchased piece by piece through shell companies while everyone else was focusing on the city. Land that's now worth billions with a new transit extension approval. So marry me was what? An investment strategy? Something like regret flickered in her eyes. It wasn't supposed to be. I did care for you, Alex. But when Dad realized what you were building, he couldn't resist. I finished. The great Stanley Pierce, outmaneuvered by a construction worker's son from Dorchester. It's business, she said simply. Nothing personal. Seducing your psychiatrist to help declare your husband mentally incompetent seems fairly personal. Olivia flinched. Theo approached me. He's worked with Dad before on similar matters. And you went along with it. All of you, plotting, manipulating, betraying. What are you going to do? She asked, fear finally breaking through her composure. I smiled coldly. Join me in the great room in 30 minutes. Bring your parents and Dr. Hammond. It's time we all had an honest conversation. As she hurried from the guest house, I collected the scattered documents, the fabricated psychological evaluation, the draft court petition, the proposed guardianship arrangement that would give the Pierces control of everything I'd built. Each page documented their betrayal in meticulous detail. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Now it was time for the final act. Chapter 6, The Reckoning. The great room had fallen silent as I concluded my presentation. On the large screen behind me, documentation of the conspiracy against me was displayed in damning detail. Surveillance photographs, recorded conversations, financial records, the fraudulent medical evaluation prepared by Hammond. Stanley Pierce sat rigid in his chair, his face flushed with anger. Beside him, Beatrice maintained her composure through years of social training, though her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Hammond had abandoned his professional demeanor entirely, while Olivia stared at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. So, I said into the silence, to summarize, you've conspired to have me declared mentally incompetent in order to gain control of my assets, particularly my land holdings. You've fabricated evidence, violated ethical guidelines, committed fraud, and betrayed every principle of family loyalty in the process. You can't prove any of this, Stanley finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. I just did, I replied calmly. Everything you've seen is admissible in court. Every conversation has been legally recorded, every document authenticated. My security team has been building this case for months. Hammond leaned forward. Alex, I urge you to consider the impact of these accusations. No one needs to be hurt here. Save your manipulations for your patients. Doctor, I cut him off. Though I doubt you'll have many left after the Massachusetts Medical Board reviews my evidence. What do you want? Stanley demanded. Money? A larger stake in Pierce Investments. I laughed. You still don't understand, do you? I don't want anything from you. I already have everything I need. Then why this spectacle? Beatrice asked, speaking for the first time. Why bring us all here to humiliate us? I wanted you to know that I knew, I said simply. I wanted you to understand exactly who you've been dealing with all these years. The construction worker's son from Dorchester you've mocked and underestimated. The outsider who was never good enough for your family. Olivia finally looked up. What happens now? Now. I smiled. Now I show you what I've been doing while you were all plotting against me. I pressed a button on the remote, changing the display to a series of legal documents. 3 months ago, I created an irrevocable trust for my children, I explained. It contains the majority of my assets, including Sullivan Construction and all property holdings. The trust is managed by an independent board of trustees with clear instructions that neither Olivia nor any member of the Pierce family can ever serve as trustees or beneficiaries, except for my children. Stanley's face darkened. You can't do that. I already have. It's done. I changed the display again. As for Sullivan Holdings, the parent company that owns this property and other personal assets, I've transferred 49% ownership to my mother, with the remaining 51% held in a separate trust with myself as the sole trustee. Again, completely legal and completely irreversible. Beatrice turned to her husband. Stanley, is this possible? Before he could answer, I continued. Additionally, I've filed formal complaints against Dr. Hammond with the medical board, including evidence of his inappropriate relationship with Olivia and his ethical violations in conspiring to have me falsely declared incompetent. Hammond paled. You're destroying my career. You did that yourself, I replied without sympathy. Actions have consequences. I turned to Stanley. As for Pierce Investments, I've forwarded documentation of your involvement in this conspiracy to the Securities and Exchange Commission. They're particularly interested in how you've been using client funds to finance personal vendettas. You bastard, Stanley hissed. This will ruin us. Possibly, I acknowledged. Though probably not. People like you tend to land on your feet. But your reputation will never recover, and that matters more to you than money ever could. I faced Olivia lastly. And you. The divorce papers have already been filed. You'll receive exactly what the prenuptial agreement stipulates. Nothing more, nothing less. The children will remain with me, with reasonable visitation rights for you, provided you seek legitimate psychological treatment. Tears filled her eyes. Alex, please. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, I said coldly. It's over. All of it. And the Hawaii trip? Beatrice asked, ever practical, even in disaster. What was the point of bringing us here? I wanted you to see what you tried to take from me, I replied. I wanted you to enjoy paradise one last time before I took it away. You're throwing away your marriage, Olivia said desperately. Think of the children. I have thought of nothing else, I interrupted. They'll grow up knowing their father stood his ground, but he didn't allow himself to be used or discarded. Stanley was regaining his composure, the businessman resurfacing. This isn't over, Sullivan. You've made powerful enemies. Actually, it is over, I contradicted him. But don't worry, you don't have to leave immediately. The staff will prepare breakfast tomorrow before your departure. The jet will be ready at noon to return you to Boston. As I turned to leave, Olivia called after me. Where will you go? I paused at the doorway. I'm staying. This is my house, after all. Enjoy your last night in paradise. In the master suite, I packed Olivia's belongings efficiently, moving them to one of the guest rooms. When I finished, I stepped onto the lanai, breathing in the ocean air as the sun began to set over Hanalei Bay. The beauty of the moment contrasted sharply with the ugliness of human betrayal I'd just exposed. My phone buzzed with a message from Walter, all legal actions executed as planned. Surveillance continuing. Standing by for further instructions. I typed back, proceed as discussed. No changes. Another message arrived, this one from Ruby. Just got confirmation that the medical board received our complaint against Hammond. They're moving quickly. Everything was falling into place. The Pierces and Hammond would return to Boston to find their carefully constructed lives beginning to unravel. Not a dramatic implosion. I wasn't interested in theatrics, but a steady, inexorable dismantling of the power and reputation they valued above all else. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Hammond standing there, his arrogance replaced by desperation. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I ask. I considered turning him away, but decided against it. 5 minutes. He entered cautiously, remaining near the door. The complaint to the medical board. If it proceeds, I'll lose everything. Yes, I can help you, he offered quickly. I have information about the Pierces, about Stanley's business practices. Things you could use. I smiled coldly. You misunderstand the situation, doctor. I don't need your help. I don't need anything from any of you. Then why let me in at all? He asked. Curiosity, I replied honestly. I wanted to see if there was anything human beneath your professional facade. Any recognition of the harm you've caused, not just to me, but to other patients who trusted you. Hammond's expression hardened. You think you're better than us. The self-made man with his principles intact. But you're just as ruthless, just as calculating. The difference, I said quietly, is that I never pretended otherwise. Now your time is up. After he left, I returned to the lanai, watching the stars emerge over the ocean. In the morning, they would all be gone, returning to Boston to face the consequences of their actions. The divorce would proceed, the complaints would be investigated, the trust arrangements would stand. I had won completely and utterly. Yet victory felt hollow in the face of such comprehensive betrayal. My phone rang, my mother's number. It's done, I told her without preamble. They're leaving tomorrow. And you? She asked. What will you do now, Alex? I looked out at the darkening sky, considering her question. I'm going to stay here a while, clear my head, then come home and rebuild what matters. The children will need you more than ever. I know, I said softly. They'll always have me. That's something the Pierces never understood, what real family means. After we hung up, I remained on the lanai until the house fell silent. In rooms throughout the property, The Pierces and Hammond were facing the ruins of their conspiracy. By morning, they would be gone, and I would begin the process of rebuilding my life, stronger, wiser, and entirely on my own terms. The house they had coveted would remain mine, and so would everything else I had built. Chapter 7. Scorched Earth. 3 months after the Hawaii confrontation, Boston was firmly in autumn's grip. Trees in the public garden blazed with color, and the morning air carried a crisp chill that hinted at the winter to come. I sat in my office, reviewing the quarterly reports for Sullivan Construction while monitoring developments in what the local business press had dubbed the Pierce implosion. Ruby entered without knocking, as was her habit, and placed a Boston Globe on my desk. "Thought you might want to see this," she said, tapping a headline. "Medical Board revokes Hammond's license." I scanned the article, which detailed the board's unanimous decision following their investigation into multiple ethics violations. Hammond's inappropriate relationships with patients, including Olivia, featured prominently in their findings. "That's one down," Ruby commented, settling into the chair opposite my desk. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I replied automatically. Ruby gave me a skeptical look. "You're working 16-hour days, you've lost weight, and you haven't taken a day off since Hawaii. That's not fine." I sighed, pushing the newspaper aside. "The children need stability. The company needs attention. The divorce proceedings are complicated, and you need to breathe," she countered. "When was the last time you saw your mom? Or did something just for yourself?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a message from Meera Patel. "Pierce Investments stock down 18% today following SEC announcement. Formal investigation proceeding." The SEC is moving forward with their investigation into Pierce Investments, I told Ruby. Stanley's board is meeting today to discuss his leave of absence. Ruby smiled grimly. "Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. What about your father-in-law? I mean, soon-to-be ex-father-in-law." "The divorce should be finalized within weeks. Olivia's lawyers are still fighting the prenup, but it's airtight." My assistant appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Sullivan, your mother is here." I checked my watch, surprised. "Send her in." Mom entered with her characteristic energy, kissing my cheek before settling on the couch by the window. At my nod, Ruby excused herself, closing the door behind her. "This is unexpected," I said. "Is everything all right with the children?" "The children are fine, at school where they belong," Mom replied. "I'm here about you." I suppressed a sigh. "Ruby called you." "Ruby didn't need to call me. I have eyes." "You're running yourself into the ground, Alex." "I'm handling it." "You're punishing yourself," she corrected. "For what? Not seeing through Olivia sooner? Trusting people who didn't deserve it?" I turned to look out at the harbor, avoiding her perceptive gaze. "I missed the signs. For years. What kind of businessman doesn't see a conspiracy happening in his own home?" "A human one," Mom said simply. "You wanted to believe in your marriage, in your family. That's not weakness, Alex. It's decency." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Meera. Olivia's legal team requesting meeting to discuss settlement. They're backing down on custody demands. "They're breaking," I told Mom, showing her the message. "The Pierces, Hammond, Olivia, they're all facing the consequences." "And is that making you happy?" Mom asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Happy? No. Satisfied, maybe. There's a difference between justice and vengeance, Alex. One heals. The other. They try to take everything from me. I interrupted. My company, my properties, my children. They would have destroyed me without a second thought. And now you've destroyed them, Mom pointed out. Stanley's career is in ruins. Hammond will never practice again. Olivia's reputation in her social circle is shattered. When does it end? I turned back to my desk, shuffling papers unnecessarily. Well, I'm sure they can never hurt us again. Mom was silent for a moment, studying me with the insight that had always been slightly unnerving. This isn't about them anymore, she finally said. It's about you not knowing how to stop fighting. That's not. Your father was the same way, she continued. Always ready for the next battle, always looking for threats. It served him well in business, but it cost him in life. By the time he realized what he was missing, it was too late. The comparison stung. I'm protecting what we've built, protecting the children. The children need their father, Mom said gently. Not just his protection, his presence, his joy. Before I could respond, my assistant buzzed again. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Pierce is in the lobby. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting on seeing you. I exchanged surprised looks with my mother. Stanley Pierce. Yes, sir. He says it's urgent. Send him up. I turned to Mom. This should be interesting. Do you want me to leave? She asked. I shook my head. No. Stay. A few minutes later, Stanley Pierce entered my office, a diminished version of the imperious figure he'd once been. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame, and new lines had etched themselves into his face. The events of the past months had aged him visibly. Sullivan, he acknowledged with a nod. His gaze shifted to my mother. Mrs. Sullivan, what do you want, Stanley? I asked without preamble. He remained standing, declining the chair I didn't offer. The SEC investigation has expanded. They're looking into transactions going back 15 years. I'm aware. The board has asked for my resignation, he continued, a muscle twitching in his jaw. 50 years building Pierce Investments, and it's over in 3 months. Again, what do you want? Stanley straightened, summoning his dignity. The North Shore Properties. Your land trust holds the key parcels needed for the Harrison Point development. Without them, Pierce Investments will collapse entirely. And I'm asking you to sell those parcels to the development consortium. Not for me, for the investors, the employees. There are 400 families who depend on Pierce Investments for their livelihoods. I studied him carefully, looking for the manipulation behind the request. Why would I help you after what you tried to do to me? Not for me, he repeated. For the innocent people caught in the crossfire. Your revenge against me is complete, Sullivan. You've won. But those employees had nothing to do with our conflict. Mom caught my eye, her expression thoughtful. I turned back to Stanley. The parcels aren't for sale, I said finally. But Sullivan Holdings might consider a joint venture arrangement. My company develops the properties. Pierce Investment handles the financing and sales. Stanley blinked, clearly not expecting this response. A joint venture? After everything. I'm a businessman first, I replied. The arrangement will be profitable for both companies. And yes, it would save those jobs you claim to care about. What's the catch? Stanley asked suspiciously. 2 conditions. First, you resign completely. No emeritus position, no consulting role. You walk away from Pierce Investments entirely. His face tightened. And the second? You tell me the truth. Right now, was Olivia ever genuinely invested in our marriage? Or was it all part of your plan from the beginning? The question hung in the air between us. Stanley seemed to age another decade before my eyes, his shoulders sagging slightly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said finally. The marriage was genuine at first. Olivia did care for you. But when I realized what you were building with those land acquisitions, you saw an opportunity. I finished for him. I suggested using her position to gain insight into your business dealings, he admitted. The rest evolved. Hammond was my idea. The psychological evaluation, the competency challenge, that was all me. Olivia just followed along. Like she always has. Mom interjected, her voice hard. Stanley nodded reluctantly. She's her father's daughter. I taught her to value success above all else. Perhaps that was my greatest failure. For a moment, I glimpsed the man beneath the ambition, a father who had warped his daughter's character through his own flawed values. It didn't excuse what Olivia had done, but it helped explain it. I'll have my legal team draft the joint venture agreement, I said, turning back to my desk in dismissal. Meera Patel will contact Pierce Investments with the details. Thank you, Stanley said stiffly. Don't thank me, I replied. This isn't forgiveness. It's business. After Stanley left, Mom remained silent, watching me process the conversation. You're doing the right thing, she finally said. Those employees don't deserve to suffer for Stanley's actions. It's not about right or wrong, I insisted. The joint venture makes financial sense. Mom smiled knowingly. If you say so. Before she left, Mom extracted a promise from me to bring the children for Sunday dinner. And Alex, she added at the door, remember what I said. Justice heals. Vengeance consumes. After she left, I stared at the harbor for a long time, thinking about her words. The systematic dismantling of the Pierce's world had consumed my every waking hour for months. The joint venture with Pierce Investments was the first decision I'd made that wasn't driven purely by the desire to destroy them. My phone rang, Olivia's number. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Alex," she said, sounding surprised I'd picked up. I didn't expect to reach you." "What do you want, Olivia?" She hesitated. "My father told me about your offer. The joint venture. It's a business decision," I said flatly. "I know," she replied, "but it's more than we deserve after what we try to do to you." I remained silent, offering no contradiction. "The children miss you," she continued. "They say you're always working now, even on your days with them." The observation stung because it contained truth. "Is there a point to this call?" "I'm seeing someone," she said after a pause. "A real therapist this time. Someone who's helping me understand what I did. Why I did it. Good for you. I know you'll never forgive me," Olivia continued, her voice catching. "I wouldn't expect you to, but I wanted you to know that I regret my actions. Not because they failed, but because they were wrong." I closed my eyes, suddenly tired. "Is that all?" "Yes," she whispered. "That's all." After hanging up, I buzzed Ruby. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I'm taking the rest of the day off." Ruby appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on her face. "Did I hear that correctly?" "You did," I confirmed, gathering my coat. "I'm going to pick up my children from school. We're going to the aquarium, and then for ice cream." Ruby smiled. "About time." As I drove toward the children's school, I realized Mom was right. I've been so focused on destroying the Pierces that I've been neglecting what mattered most. The vengeance had served its purpose. Justice had been delivered. Now it was time to heal, to rebuild, to focus on the future rather than the past. The Pierces would never again have the power to hurt me or my family. I made sure of that, but I didn't need to personally oversee every moment of their downfall. Some battles were won simply by walking away. As I pulled up to the school, I saw my daughter's face light up as she spotted my car. She tugged her brother's hand, pointing excitedly. Their unrestrained joy at this unexpected appearance pierced through the armor I'd built around myself. In that moment, I understood what true victory looked like. Not the systematic destruction of my enemies, but the preservation of what they had tried to take from me, my family, my integrity, my capacity for joy. The war was over. Now came the harder part, peace. Chapter 8, Reconstruction. The grand opening of Harrison Point drew Boston's business elite despite the December chill. Under heated tents with views of the shoreline, investors and media representatives gathered to celebrate what the Boston Business Journal had called the most ambitious development project in New England history. As I circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions, I caught sight of Nolan Pierce across the tent. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, discomfort evident in his posture. Unlike Stanley, who had retreated to Florida following his resignation, Nolan had remained with Pierce Investments, working under the new leadership to salvage what remained of the company's reputation. "Quite the triumph," commented Walter Burke, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. He offered me one. "6 months ago, Pierce Investments was trying to take everything from you. Now they're your junior partners in the biggest development project on the East Coast." I accepted the champagne. Business makes for strange bedfellows. "Indeed," Walter agreed, though I noticed the elder Pierce is conspicuously absent. "Part of our arrangement," I explained. "Stanley has no connection to this project or the company that bears his name." Walter nodded approvingly. "Clean break. Smart." I gestured toward the architectural renderings displayed on easels throughout the tent. "What do you think of the final design?" "Impressive," Walter said, studying the images. "Sustainable, community-focused, integrated with a natural landscape. Not the typical luxury development I expected." "That was my requirement," I said. If Sullivan Construction was going to be associated with this project, it needed to reflect our values. "Values?" Walter repeated with a hint of amusement. Not a word often heard in development circles. "Maybe it should be," I countered. "Profit and principle don't have to be mutually exclusive." Walter's gaze shifted over my shoulder. Speaking of principals, your ex-wife just arrived. I turned to see Olivia entering the tent, elegant in an understated gray suit that contrasted sharply with the flashier styles of her social circle. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago, and this was the first time we'd appeared at the same event since then. "Excuse me," I told Walter. "I should say hello." As I approached, Olivia's composed expression flickered with uncertainty. "Alex," she greeted me. "Congratulations on the project. Everything looks remarkable." "Thank you," I replied. "I'm surprised to see you here. Nolan invited me," she explained. "I hope that's not a problem." "It's a public event," I said with a shrug. "How have you been?" Something like gratitude crossed her face at this small courtesy. "I'm managing. The therapy is challenging but necessary. And you? The children say you've been more present lately." "I'm trying," I admitted. "Work will always be important, but I'm learning to balance it better." An awkward silence fell between us. 5 years of marriage and months of betrayal creating a gulf too wide to bridge with small talk. "I heard about the community center you're building as part of the development," Olivia said finally. "And the affordable housing component. That wasn't in the original Pierce plans." "No, it wasn't. It's a good change," she offered. "The kind of project that makes a real difference." Before I could respond, Mira Patel approached us. "Alex, the mayor has arrived. He's asking to speak with you." "Of course," I said, nodding to Olivia. "If you'll excuse me." "Actually," Olivia said quickly, "I was hoping we could schedule a time to talk about the children's holiday arrangements. With Christmas coming up." "Call my assistant," I replied, already turning away. "She'll find a time that works." The mayor's speech praised the Harrison Point development for its innovation, job creation, and commitment to sustainability. As the nominal host, I gave brief remarks emphasizing community integration and environmental responsibility. The applause was enthusiastic, though I noticed Nolan's was perfunctory at best. Later, as the event wound down, Nolan approached me at the bar. "Sullivan," he acknowledged stiffly. "Quite the spectacle you've orchestrated." "Just good business," I replied. "How are things at Pierce Investments?" His expression tightened. "Stabilizing. No thanks to your SEC investigation." "The investigation was entirely of your father's making," I reminded him. "Actions have consequences." "So, I've observed," Nolan said dryly. "Father in exile, Hammond disgraced, Olivia divorced. You've been nothing if not thorough in your retribution." I studied him thoughtfully. "You knew what they were planning, didn't you? The competency challenge, the asset seizure, all of it." Nolan shifted uncomfortably. "I was aware of discussions." "And you said nothing? Did nothing? What was I supposed to do?" he demanded. "Betray my family? Like they betrayed me?" Nolan had no answer for that. After a moment, he sighed. "For what it's worth, I advised against it. Told them it would backfire." "Smart of you," I acknowledged. "Not moral, but smart." He flushed slightly. "We can't all be paragons of virtue, Sullivan. Some of us just try to survive our families." There was something raw in this admission that gave me pause. For the first time, I considered what it must have been like growing up under Stanley Pierce's influence. The constant pressure, the conditional love, the lessons in ruthlessness presented as business acumen. "Fair enough," I conceded. "How's your father adjusting to retirement?" Nolan laughed bitterly. "About as well as you'd expect. He calls daily with suggestions for the company. Mother says he's driving the household staff to rebellion." "And Dr. Hammond?" "Left the country, from what I hear. Some wellness center in Switzerland where they don't look too closely at licensing issues." I nodded, having already received this information from Walter's sources. "And your sister?" "Charlotte." Nolan seemed surprised by the question. "Thriving, actually. With father's influence diminished, she's finally pursuing that environmental law degree she always wanted. Turns out she is quite the mind when not being stifled by paternal expectations." This was news to me. During our marriage, Charlotte had always seemed the most Pierce-like of the siblings. Perfectly groomed, unfailingly proper, rarely expressing an original thought. "People can surprise you," I commented. "Indeed they can," Nolan agreed, glancing around the tent. "Like this development. Not at all what father envisioned, but arguably better." The community focus has generated positive press we desperately needed. The Sullivan touch, I said with a hint of irony. The Sullivan touch, he echoed. Who would have thought we'd end up here after Hawaii? The mention of Hawaii brought a sudden chill to the conversation. Memories of betrayal still too raw. If you'll excuse me, I said, setting down my glass. I need to check in with the project manager before heading out. As I walked away, Nolan called after me. Sullivan. I paused, turning back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. I studied him for a moment, searching for insincerity and finding none. Noted, I said finally, and continued on my way. Outside, away from the heated tents, the December air was bracing. I stood for a moment looking out over the development site. Acres of prime coastal land that would soon transform into a thoughtfully designed community. Not just luxury homes for the wealthy, as Stanley had planned, but a mixed-use development with affordable housing, public spaces, and environmental protections for the shoreline. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Children fed and homework done. Emma wants to know if you'll be home in time to read her story. I smiled, typing back, on my way. Tell her to pick a short one. As I walked to my car, I reflected on the strange turns of the past year. The betrayal had been complete, the vengeance swift and calculated. Yet here I was, partnered with Pierce Investments in a project that would define both our companies for decades to come. Business made for strange bedfellows indeed. At home, a new home in a different neighborhood with no memories of Olivia. I found Emma waiting in her pajamas, book in hand. At 8, she had my dark hair and her mother's blue eyes, along with a determination that was entirely her own. You're late, she informed me gravely. The mayor is very talkative, I explained, sitting on the edge of her bed. What are we reading tonight? She handed me a worn copy of The Secret Garden, one of my childhood favorites that I'd passed down to her. We're at the part where Mary finds the key, she said, settling against her pillows. As I read, my son Michael appeared in the doorway, trying to look too grown up to join at 12, but unable to resist the story. He slowly edged into the room, eventually sitting at the foot of Emma's bed. Is the garden really magic? Emma asked when I paused between chapters. What do you think? I countered. She considered this seriously. I think it's not magic like spells and wands. It's magic like making things better that were broken. Out of the mouths of babes. I think you might be right, I told her. Sometimes the most powerful magic is just healing. After the children were asleep, I sat in my home office reviewing the Harrison Point contracts one last time. The joint venture with Pierce Investments had been structured to protect Sullivan Holdings completely. Ironclad agreements, clear boundaries, multiple safeguards. Walter and Mira had seen to that. Yet as I looked over the paperwork, I realized something had shifted in me. The relentless drive for protection, for advantage, had eased somewhat. Not disappeared. I wasn't naive enough for that, but tempered by other considerations. Community impact, environmental responsibility, legacy beyond profit. My phone buzzed with a message from Ruby, Hammond spotted in Geneva. Want me to update the file? I hesitated before responding. No need. Case closed. It was time to stop monitoring their every move, to release the vigilance that had consumed me for months. The Pierces and Hammond had been neutralized as threats. Continuing to track them served no purpose except to keep me tethered to the past. Emma's words echoed in my mind. Magic like making things better that were broken. Some breaks couldn't be repaired. My marriage was over, trust shattered beyond recovery. But other things, my relationship with my children, my sense of purpose, my capacity for something beyond vengeance, those could be mended. The house in Hawaii remained mine, a beautiful property I'd visited only once. Perhaps it was time to create new memories there, positive ones with my children. A place of healing rather than confrontation. I closed the contract files and opened my calendar instead, blocking off 2 weeks in February for a family trip to Hanalei Bay. The children would love the beach, the pool, the lush gardens. And I would begin the process of reclaiming that space from the shadow of betrayal. It wasn't forgiveness, some actions lay beyond that, but it was a step toward something new. A future not defined by the Pierces or their schemes, but by my own choices. As I prepared for bed, I found myself thinking of something my father had told me shortly before he died. Success isn't what you build, Alex. It's what you build that stands even when you're gone. The Harrison Point development would stand. Sullivan Construction would stand. Most importantly, my children would stand, hopefully stronger and wiser for having weathered this storm. That would be success enough. Chapter 9. Reclamation. 1 year to the day after the Hawaii confrontation, I stood on the lanai of the Hanalei Bay house, watching Emma and Michael splash in the infinity pool. The property had been transformed, not physically, as the renovation had already made it perfect, but energetically. What had once been the site of betrayal and confrontation was now filled with children's laughter and new memories. "They're loving it here," Mom observed, joining me with 2 glasses of iced tea. Michael's even put down his video games willingly. I smiled, accepting the drink. The ocean tends to have that effect. "And you?" she asked, studying my face. "How are you doing with being back here?" I considered the question honestly. Better than I expected. The good memories are starting to outweigh the bad ones. "Time helps," she said simply. "So does perspective." We watched the children in comfortable silence. Michael, showing unexpected patience, was teaching Emma how to dive, demonstrating the proper form before offering encouragement for her hesitant attempts. "You've done well with them," Mom said softly. "Through everything, they've stayed secure, confident. That's no small achievement." "I had a good example," I replied, squeezing her hand. "A parent who put their child first, no matter what." My phone buzzed with a message. Normally, I would have ignored it on vacation, but the sender made me pause. Nolan Pierce. Harrison Point Phase 1 fully sold. Phase 2 pre-sales exceeding projections by 38%. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss expansion options. Your input requested. Interesting. The joint venture with Pierce Investments had proven remarkably successful, surpassing even my optimistic projections. What had begun as a strategic move to salvage jobs while maintaining control had evolved into a genuinely profitable partnership. "Work?" Mom asked, noting my expression. "Pierce Investments," I confirmed. "The development is exceeding expectations." "And how does that feel? Working with them after everything?" I consider the question. Surprisingly straightforward. Business is business. The structures we put in place protect everyone's interests. "And Stanley? Has he accepted his exile?" "Grudgingly," I replied. "He started some consulting firm in Palm Beach. Small scale, nothing like his former influence. Keeping busy, from what I hear." Mom nodded thoughtfully. "And Olivia?" The children mentioned she's dating someone. "A professor at Boston College," I confirmed. "History department. Seems decent enough from the background check." Mom raised an eyebrow. "You ran a background check on your ex-wife's boyfriend?" "Habit," I admitted, but a less thorough one than I might have done 6 months ago. She laughed. "Progress, I suppose." My phone buzzed again. Ruby this time. Dr. Levine called to confirm tomorrow's session with the children. "Should I reschedule due to your vacation?" Dr. Sarah Levine was the child psychologist who had been working with Emma and Michael since the divorce. Unlike Hammond, she was ethical, straightforward, and genuinely invested in her patients' well-being. I typed back, "No need to reschedule. We'll be back in time. Flight lands at 2 p.m. "Everything okay?" Mom asked. "Just confirming the children's therapy appointment," I explained. "It's been helping them process everything." "And what about you?" she pressed. "Any processing of your own happening?" I smiled wryly. "Subtle, Mom." "I'm serious," she insisted. "You've taken care of business, taken care of the children, taken care of legal matters. But what about Alex Sullivan the man, not the CEO or father?" It was a fair question, one I'd been avoiding. The past year had been focused entirely on external concerns, protecting my assets, securing my children's future, rebuilding my company's direction. I'd given little thought to my own emotional recovery. "I'm getting there," I said finally. "One step at a time." Mom seemed satisfied with this answer, however vague. "Well, this is a good step," she said, gesturing to the beautiful setting around us. Reclaiming spaces, creating new memories. That evening, after the children were asleep, I sat alone on the lanai, nursing a glass of whiskey and watching the moonlight on the water. The house was peaceful now, cleansed of the tension and betrayal that had filled it a year ago. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize with a Swiss country code. Sullivan, I answered cautiously. It's Hammond, said the voice on the other end. Theodore Hammond. I nearly hung up, but curiosity kept me on the line. What do you want? To apologize, he said, surprising me, for my role in what happened. It was unethical, unprofessional, and deeply wrong. Why now? I asked, suspicion evident in my tone. I've been in treatment, he explained. Real treatment, not the kind I pretended to provide. Part of my recovery is making amends where possible. Convenient timing, I observed. Your license revocation appeal hearing is next month, isn't it? Hammond sighed. Yes, but that's not why I'm calling. Whether you believe me or not, I needed to acknowledge the harm I caused. What Stanley and I planned, it was unconscionable. And Olivia, was she just a pawn in your game? There was a pause before he answered. No, that was a separate mistake. Equally unethical, but not initially part of Stanley's plan. Initially, I repeated. Things escalated, Hammond admitted. One ethical breach led to another, then another. Before I knew it, I'd violated every principle I claimed to uphold. I swirled the whiskey in my glass, considering his words. Why should I care about your moral awakening, Hammond? You shouldn't, he replied simply. This call isn't for your benefit. It's for mine. Part of facing what I've done. But if hearing this provides you any closure, I'd consider that a small positive in a sea of negatives. Despite myself, I was struck by the apparent sincerity in his voice. What happens after your appeal? If it's denied, which seems likely, I'll continue teaching at a small clinic here in Geneva. Not as a doctor, but as someone with experience in how ethical failures develop. A cautionary tale, essentially. And if by some miracle it's granted, I wouldn't return to practice, he said firmly. That chapter is closed. I'd likely continue in education, but with a license that would allow me to properly supervise students. I found myself believing him, which was unexpected. Hammond, I have no interest in your redemption arc. But for what it's worth, recognizing your mistakes is a start. Thank you for taking my call, he said. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I admitted before ending the call. The conversation left me unsettled, not because of any lingering anger toward Hammond, but because of my own unexpected capacity for something approaching understanding. Not forgiveness. The breach had been too severe for that, but a recognition of human fallibility, including my own. The next morning, as we prepared to return to Boston, I took one last walk along the beach alone, considering the path forward. The revenge had been necessary, a clear message that I could not be manipulated or controlled. But the energy it required had served its purpose. It was time to direct that focus elsewhere. On the flight home, while the children watched movies and Mom dozed, I drafted a new business plan for Sullivan Construction, one focused on sustainable development, community integration, and responsible growth. The kind of legacy that would outlast any personal vendetta. Back in Boston, life resumed its structured rhythm. Work, children, occasional social engagements with the small circle of friends I'd maintained through the divorce. The joint venture with Pierce Investments continued to thrive, though I maintained a professional distance from direct interaction with Nolan or the board. 3 weeks after our return, Ruby appeared in my office doorway with an unusual expression, something between confusion and curiosity. Olivia is here to see you, she announced. She doesn't have an appointment. I frowned. Did she say what it's about? Just that it's important and not related to the children. Intrigued despite myself, I nodded. Send her in. Olivia entered looking composed, but slightly nervous, dressed for her administrative role at a local arts foundation, a position she'd taken after the divorce, her first real job in years. Thank you for seeing me, she said, taking the seat I indicated. I know you're busy. What can I do for you, Olivia? She placed a folder on the desk between us. This arrived at my apartment yesterday. I thought you should see it. I opened the folder to find legal documents, a draft petition for an involuntary psychiatric evaluation, nearly identical to the one Hammond had prepared for me, but with Stanley Pierce's name as the subject. Where did you get this? I asked, scanning the contents. It was delivered anonymously, Olivia explained, but I suspect it came from my father's attorney. He and my mother have been fighting constantly since they moved to Florida. She's threatened divorce multiple times. I closed the folder. Why bring this to me? Olivia met my gaze directly. Because it's exactly what they try to do to you. And regardless of our history, I couldn't stand by and watch it happen again, even to my father. The irony was almost too perfect. Beatrice Pierce, using her husband's own tactics against him. What are you asking me to do about it? I inquired, genuinely curious. Nothing directly, Olivia replied. I've already warned my father. But I thought you should know that Beatrice approached Dr. Levine, the children's therapist, about testifying regarding Stanley's mental state. This was unexpected. Dr. Levine has never treated your father. Exactly. She refused immediately and reported the contact to the ethics board. But it shows how far my mother is willing to go. I pushed the folder back across the desk. While I appreciate the information, this isn't my concern. Your parents' marital issues are their own problem. Even if they try to drag our children's therapist into it, Olivia challenged. Even if it becomes the exact same scenario they orchestrated against you? She had a point. Dr. Levine's involvement with my children made this my business, however tangentially. I'll speak with Dr. Levine, I conceded. Ensure she's fully aware of the situation. Beyond that, your parents will have to sort out their own mess. Olivia nodded, seemingly satisfied with this response. Thank you. As she stood to leave, I found myself asking, why did you really come here, Olivia? You could have handled this with a phone call. She paused, considering her answer carefully. Because I wanted you to see that I've changed, that I recognize the patterns now, the manipulation, the ethical compromises, the ends justify the means thinking. It's how I was raised, but it's not who I want to be. For the children's sake, I hope that's true, I said. Not just for them, she replied. For myself, too. I don't expect forgiveness, Alex. What I did was unforgivable, but I'm trying to be better. After she left, I sat thinking about the cyclical nature of betrayal. Stanley, who had orchestrated a plot to have me declared incompetent, now faced the same threat from his own wife. The tactics he'd taught his family had come back to haunt him. There was a certain justice in it, though not one I'd orchestrated. That evening, I called Walter Burke with specific instructions. Ensured Dr. Levine had complete protection from any pressure the Pierces might apply, but otherwise stay out of their family drama. The battle I'd fought and won was over. I had no interest in watching them destroy each other. 6 months later, the headline appeared in the Boston Globe. Real Estate Mogul receives Urban Development Award. The article detailed Sullivan Construction's transformation of the Harrison Point project from a luxury development into a model of sustainable community design. The accompanying photo showed me accepting the award, flanked by my children and mother. In the background, barely visible, stood Nolan Pierce, now CEO of Pierce Investments and a continuing partner in the development. Stanley and Beatrice Pierce had indeed divorced, their mutual destruction playing out in Florida courts rather than Massachusetts ones. Hammond remained in Switzerland, his appeal denied, but his clinical teaching position apparently providing some measure of redemption. And Olivia had maintained her word, focusing on her relationship with the children while respecting the boundaries of our post-divorce arrangement. Her relationship with the history professor had developed into something seemingly stable and positive, which the children reported with cautious approval. As for me, the Hawaii house had become a regular vacation spot, no longer a symbol of betrayal, but simply a beautiful property where my children could experience the ocean and create happy memories. I'd even granted Olivia limited use of it during specified periods, a concession that surprised both of us but seemed right for the children's sake. The empire I'd built remained intact, stronger now for having weathered the attempt to dismantle it. The trust protecting my assets for the children was ironclad, the company thriving under leadership that balanced profit with principle, and my personal life slowly rebuilding with a newfound appreciation for transparency and genuine connection. The reckoning had been necessary, swift, calculated, and complete. But the reclamation that followed had been equally important. Reclaiming spaces, relationships, and most importantly, a future not defined by others' betrayal but by my own choices. In the end, the house they coveted remained mine. But what I chose to build there, that was the true victory. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.